I have had a lot of cars apart over the years, and I can tell you the failure that ends up in a dispute is almost never the one people expect. It is not a blown gearbox. It is a frozen screen that also takes the speedometer with it, a charging flap that will not close, a rattle nobody can find, 3 visits to the same dealer, and a service manager who says the fault is not showing on the diagnostic. Here is the honest version of the headline before we go any further. Nobody publishes a clean national figure for how many new cars get formally rejected in the UK each year. The DVSA does not count it. The manufacturers certainly do not publish it. And the Ombudsman only sees the fraction that escalates. So when you see millions, understand that the word returning is doing about 4 different jobs at once. Some of it is faulty cars going back. Some of it is people walking out of finance they can no longer carry. And a very large slice of it is contracts simply reaching their end. All 3 are worth understanding because they use completely different keys. 2 things to hold on to while we go. Door 4, the 50% one, catches almost everybody out for one specific reason. The half you have to have paid is not half the price of the car, and I will show you the arithmetic on a real-world figure. And when we get to the pivot, I am going to read you a carve-out sitting inside the Consumer Rights Act that applies to motor vehicles and to almost nothing else in the shop. It is short, it is dull, and it is worth about £1,000 of your money. Start with the thing that makes all 4 doors work, because if you get this wrong, nothing else lands. You did not buy a set of promises from a brochure. You bought goods, and goods in this country carry 3 legal conditions. When you buy a new or second-hand car from a UK dealership, the Consumer Rights Act says you can expect it to be of satisfactory quality, taking into account its age and mileage, to meet any description given to you when you are buying it, in the advert or in the conversation beforehand, and to be fit for purpose. Fail any one of those 3 and you have a remedy. Fail none of them and you have a car you have gone off, which is not the same thing at all. And that distinction is where most people lose. Cosmetic issues and minor faults are not valid grounds to hand a car back. Those belong under warranty. And you cannot successfully reject a car for a trivial reason like a small scratch, or because you have decided you do not like something about it. The exception is when you bought it for a stated purpose. If you told them you needed it to tow a caravan and it turns out it cannot, that is a different conversation. Now, the bit that decides the whole thing, and it is a piece of plumbing rather than a principle. If your car is on PCP or hire purchase, you are not the owner. The finance company bought that car and is hiring it to you with an option at the end. That sounds like a technicality until you realise it means your legal counterparty is the lender, not the smiling bloke in the polo shirt. Which is why the single most common thing that goes wrong in a rejection is that people spend 4 months arguing with a dealership that has no power to refund them, while the party that actually owes them a remedy never receives a word in writing. There is a useful old hand principle in the trade that applies here perfectly. Fault find upstream of the symptom. The symptom is the car. The contract is upstream. Door 1. 14 days, and you do not need a reason at all. This one exists because of how cars are sold now. Reserved online, paid for over the phone, delivered on a transporter to your drive. By the way, if you want to keep your car running for as long as possible without wasting money on unnecessary garage bills, I put together a guide called the 500k Mile Car Care Bible. It covers 101 habits that can help your car last longer, the warning signs you should never ignore, and how to spot unnecessary repairs and garage upsells before they cost you a fortune. To get your copy, just scan the QR code on screen with your phone's camera, or use the first pinned comment below. Buying a car without visiting the dealer counts as a distance contract. The 14-day cancellation right applies unless a specific exemption is triggered, and there is no exemption simply because the item happens to be a car. You can cancel under those regulations for any reason at all inside the window. No fault required, no argument about satisfactory quality. For goods, the 14 days runs from the day after the car is delivered to you or to somebody you nominated, and there is a sting in the tail for the seller who does not tell you about it. Getting the disclosure wrong can extend the cancellation period to as much as 12 months. Two limits, and I would rather you heard them from me than from a solicitor. This is a cancellation right, not a right to use something for a fortnight and post it back scuffed. Distant sellers can withhold a refund until the goods come back, and they can deduct from that refund where the item appears to have been used. So, collecting it, doing 800 miles and a trip to Cornwall, then cancelling is not the free look people think it is. If you signed anything on the premises, sat in the chair, took the pen, this door is closed to you, which brings us to the one most people mean. Door 2, 30 days, and this is the strongest position you will ever be in. The first 30 days after delivery give you the strongest protection there is. If the car misses any one of those 3 standards, you can reject it and claim a full refund, and you do not have to accept a repair or a replacement during that window. Read that last part again, because it is the part dealers skate over. Inside 30 days, the choice is yours, not theirs. The clock starts the day after the car is delivered or ownership transfers, not the day you signed. A refund should be with you within 14 days of the seller agreeing to it, and you should not be charged for collecting or removing the vehicle. Nice and clean on paper. In the real world, it is a wrestling match, and there are 2 rules of thumb worth having. The dealer does not owe you an instant refund. They will want to carry out their own assessment first, and they may well disagree that the car should be rejected at all. The second thing is uglier, and here I am telling you the unflattering bit rather than the comfortable one. If you part exchanged your old car against the new one, you do not get your old car back. You get a cash value for it. And once you are past the short-term right to reject, that value may not be the full one. So here is the practical judgment. If a fault appears in week 1, and it is genuinely a fault rather than a niggle, do not let anybody talk you into a goodwill fix while the clock quietly runs down. Get it in writing on the day that you are exercising the short-term right to reject. Nothing stops you accepting a repair afterwards if you change your mind, but you cannot rewind day 31. Where I would take the repair instead, a known software issue with a published fix, a part on order, anything where the dealer commits in writing to a timescale. Where I would not, anything intermittent. An intermittent fault is the single worst thing to own because the burden of proving it lands on you and the diagnostic screen keeps saying no fault found. Door 3, between 30 days and 6 months, and the balance of power tips, but not as far as you would think. Past 30 days and inside 6 months, you have to give the selling dealer one attempt to fix the fault before you can move to reject the vehicle. If that repair has not fixed it, you can reject. One attempt, not 4, not however many they feel like. And the piece of this that is genuinely on your side, which almost nobody knows they have, for the first 6 months, they have to prove the car was fine, not the other way round. There is a published ombudsman case that shows exactly how that plays. An owner collected a new compact SUV from a franchise dealer, had speaker trouble within a week, took it back, and the following month, the infotainment screen went blank as well. It went in, came out, and the screen froze again, along with a spell where the speed, fuel, and rev displays showed nothing at all. The dealer's position was that they could not find any faults and could offer no further assistance. The adjudicator noted that because the issues arose within the first 6 months, the burden was on the business to show the defects were not there at the point of sale. That under the Act, the seller gets one opportunity to repair before the right to reject kicks in. and that although speakers had been replaced and a software update applied, the owner's own videos showed the screen freezing and the speedometer failing to display, which went to usability and safety both. Videos. That is the whole lesson in one word. The owner won that on evidence they gathered on a phone, not on eloquence. After 6 months, the burden flips onto you, and you are into engineers' reports and expert evidence. Your rights do not vanish. Statutory rights under the Consumer Rights Act cannot be excluded or reduced by any warranty agreement, and they run for up to 6 years after purchase, 5 if you are in Scotland. But the practical cost of enforcing them climbs steeply, and I would be lying if I said otherwise. So how do you actually do this without losing? 6 things in order, and this is the part I would want a mate to tell me. First, the evidence. From day one. Date and time every fault. Video every occurrence, including the dashboard and, if you safely can, the sound. Photograph the odometer each time the car goes in and comes back. Keep every job sheet, and if they do not give you one, ask for it in writing and keep the email in which they do not reply. Second, put the fault in writing to the dealer immediately and use the words. Say the vehicle is not of satisfactory quality and that you are asserting your rights under the Consumer Rights Act 2015. Phone calls evaporate. Emails do not. Third, and this is the one that saves months, write to the finance company at the same time, because on PCP or HP, they are the party the law looks at. Most lenders and dealers do not advertise your options, and some will actively steer you away from them when you ask. Send them the same evidence pack. Ask them, in writing, to record it as a formal complaint. Fourth, keep paying. I know exactly how galling that is. Cancel the direct debit, and you convert a dispute you were winning into arrears. You have to explain, and arrears follow you around for 6 years. Pay, complain, and claim it back. Fifth, escalate to the right body, because there are 2 and people pick the wrong one constantly. The Motor Ombudsman handles disputes with car dealerships, faulty cars within 30 days of purchase, unsatisfactory repairs and warranty disputes, and explicitly does not handle car finance claims, insurance disputes, or businesses that are not signed up to its codes of practice. If the dealer is not accredited, it cannot help you at all, so check that before you invest 3 months in it. A finance complaint goes to the lender first and then to the Financial Ombudsman Service. Sixth, know the courtroom numbers before you threaten one. If your claim is worth more than the small claims limit where you live, £10,000 in England and Wales, £5,000 in Scotland and Northern Ireland, take legal advice first, because you are into slower and more expensive territory. The safety note, and it is a real one rather than boilerplate. If the fault touches brakes, steering, lights, tyres, or the instrument display, stop driving it. A car that will not reliably show you your own road speed is not a car you keep using while you write letters. Beyond the obvious risk, continuing to drive something you have described as unsafe undermines the very claim you are making, and the other side will point that out. You are past the halfway mark and still with me, so let me be direct rather than clever. If this is useful, subscribe. It is one tap, and it means the next one of these finds you. 2 doors still to go, and the last one is the door hundreds of thousands of people walk through every year without ever being told it existed. Door 4. Voluntary termination. This is a legal right written into the Consumer Credit Act 1974. It lets you end a regulated hire purchase or PCP agreement early, hand the car back to the lender, and walk away from the remaining payments with no further liability, provided certain conditions are met. It is not a loophole, and not something to apologise for using. It is a statutory right that exists precisely for people whose circumstances change. It does not apply to personal contract hire or standard leasing. Now the condition, and here is the loop I promised you. You have the right, once you have paid, or are willing to pay, 50% of the total amount payable under the agreement. Crucially, that is 50% of the total amount payable, including the balloon, not 50% of the cash price. Because the balloon sits inside that total, the threshold is much higher than people expect, and many PCP customers do not reach it until late in the agreement, or have to make a top-up payment to get there. Put numbers on it. Take a car around £24,000, where the total amount payable across the deal comes out near £25,800. Half of that is roughly £12,900. And on a typical 4-year PCP, with a big chunk of value parked in the balloon, your monthly payments plus deposit do not cross that line until you are 2/3 to 3/4 of the way through the term. That is the general shape of it. Voluntary termination usually becomes available somewhere around 65 to 75% of the way through the contract. Which means the person who signs in January and wants out in September is not walking away for free. They are being handed an invoice for the gap, what it does and does not cost you. The lender cannot ask you for depreciation or normal wear and tear. What you owe is capped at 50% of the total amount payable, subject to any arrears, allowable charges, and damage beyond fair wear and tear. You can still be charged for excess mileage you have already run up. And a valid termination requires that you took reasonable care of the vehicle and return it in a condition consistent with that. On your credit file, it does not damage you the way a default does. The agreement is recorded as settled just early. But I will give you the unvarnished trade view too. Some lenders do not love seeing it because it shows an agreement that was not carried to term, and a few will read that as risk when you next apply. That is a judgment call, not a rule, and it is a lot cheaper than arrears. The one people confuse it with, and the confusion is expensive. Voluntary termination is the protected right with no further liability once you are past that halfway mark. Voluntary surrender is handing the car back because you cannot keep up the payments, and that does damage your credit file. Same phone call. Two completely different outcomes. Ask for the first by name. The fifth door is barely a door, which is why it gets one paragraph. At the natural end of a PCP or a lease, you hand it back, and that is that. The car goes for a detailed inspection covering damage, wear, missing equipment, service history and mileage, and anything outside the agreed guidelines can generate additional charges. That is not a return in any meaningful sense. It is the contract doing what it always said it would. So why is all of this happening in 2026 in particular? 4 pressures arriving at once. The first is money, and it is the boring one that moves the most cars. Well over 80% of new private car sales in this country are funded through some form of consumer credit. So when household budgets tighten, the car payment is one of the biggest discretionary numbers in the house, and one of the few with a legal exit built in. The second is tax, and this one lands on your renewal notice whether or not you are paying attention. New zero-emission cars registered from April 2026 pay £10 in the first year, then move to the standard yearly rate of £200 from year 2. The expensive car supplement is £440 for 2026 or 27, and while the threshold for that supplement rose to £50,000 for zero-emission cars from April 2026, applied retrospectively to cars registered from April 2025, it stayed at £40,000 for everything else. On a petrol or diesel car over that £40,000 line, the supplement stacked on the standard rate is the difference between a modest annual bill and one comfortably north of £600 for 5 years running. Nobody put that on the showroom board next to the monthly payment. The third is the finance scandal, and it is the reason so many people are looking at their agreements at all this year. On the 30th of March, 2026, the FCA confirmed an industry-wide motor finance redress scheme, C26.3, requiring lenders to assess every eligible agreement and pay compensation to affected customers. It covers PCP and HP agreements, where dealers were paid undisclosed commissions between April 2007 and November 2024, with lenders expected to pay out around £7.5 billion, and an average of roughly £829 per eligible agreement plus interest. Around 12 million agreements are eligible. You do not need a claims company to complain to your lender, and if your complaint fails, you can take it to the Financial Ombudsman Service for free. I will flag honestly that the scheme has been subject to legal challenge, so treat the timings as intentions rather than promises. If you are contacted, note that you have to respond within 6 months to join. The fourth is the cars themselves. And here I have less standing than I would like, because the cleanest data on this is American, and I am not going to pretend it is British. For what it is worth, the 2026 J.D. Power Dependability Study in the States put the industry average at 204 problems per 100 vehicles, the highest since that study was redesigned, with infotainment the most problematic category by a wide margin, and only 27% of owners said an over-the-air update actually improved their car. The UK picture from the What Car survey is more encouraging and measures something different. Pure electric cars averaged 90.4% in 2025, up from 87.7% the year before, and 95% of faults were fixed at no cost to the owner, against 87% back in 2018. The two are not in conflict. Cars are getting more reliable and more annoying at the same time, and it is the annoying that ends up at the Ombudsman, which the Ombudsman's own numbers bear out. In the second quarter of 2026, the standard of customer service from retailers was the leading source of electric vehicle disputes, nearly half of all cases. Complaints about the quoted range for a full charge were 2%. 2. All that noise about range anxiety and what people actually complain about is being treated badly. The average sum consumers wanted to resolve their complaint was £6,830, about a fifth lower than the same quarter a year before. Now, the part I promised, and I want you sitting still for it, everything I have told you about the 30-day and 6-month rules is true. But there is one line that treats your car differently from a fridge, a laptop, or a sofa, and it works entirely in one direction. For most goods, if you take a refund inside the first 6 months, the seller cannot dock you for having used the thing. That is deliberate. It stops a trader selling you something defective, dragging out the repair, then billing you rent for the privilege. There is an exception written into the Consumer Rights Act, and the deduction-for-use exception is unique to motor vehicles, not to expensive goods, not to complicated goods, to cars. So follow the arithmetic, because the arithmetic is the accusation. You buy a car. It is faulty from the moment you get it. That is the premise. You would not be rejecting it otherwise. Their repair fails. You exercise a right that was granted to you because they sold you something defective. And at that point, they are permitted to reduce your refund to reflect the miles you covered in a car that was broken while you were covering them. The dealer may deduct for usage. Unlike the short-term right to reject, what you get back may not be the full value, and there is no formula. That is what I want you to notice most. The law does not specify a rate, a method, or a cap, which means the number you are offered is calculated by the party paying it. Sources vary on the going approach: a pence per mile figure, a straight-line percentage of the term, sometimes just a round sum on a letter. And I'm going to be straight with you. I cannot point you to a single authoritative rate because there is not one. My read, and I am marking it as a read, is that the absence of a formula is doing more work here than the exception itself. A vague number written by the person who owes it to you always lands in the same place. I do not know why cars were carved out. I have looked, and I cannot show you a document that explains it in a way I would be happy repeating. Somebody argued the point. Somebody accepted it, and the sentence went in. Look at what surrounds it, and you will see the pattern. The standard your handback is judged against is the Industry Fair Wear and Tear Guide, whose stated aim is to provide an industry-wide accepted standard defining fair wear and tear on cars returned at the end of a lease or finance agreement, a document produced by the trade body for the companies engaged in leasing, rental and fleet management. It may well be a fair document. Plenty of people in the trade think it is, but nobody asked you where the line goes, and if you disagree with the inspector, your route is to pay for an examination by an independent qualified engineer yourself. That is the shape of the whole thing. Every discretionary number in your ownership of that car, the deduction, the wear assessment, the mileage charge, is defined by somebody on the other side of the table. Not stolen, defined. And a definition costs nothing to write and pays out for 20 years. You cannot repeal the exception. What you can do is stop it working on you. Reject inside 30 days where the choice of remedy is yours and the deduction question does not arise. And if you are past that, put your mileage in writing. Ask for the deduction to be itemised and justified in writing, and treat the first figure they offer as an opening position rather than a calculation. Step back from the paperwork for a second, because there is something underneath all of it worth saying plainly. The best thing about knowing how a thing works is not that you win arguments, it is that you stop being frightened of it. A contract you have not read is a thing that happens to you. A contract you have read is just a machine with a set of levers, most of which are perfectly reasonable, one or two of which you will want to keep your hand on. The people I have most respected in this trade were never the ones who knew every part number. They were the ones who could look at a thing they had never seen before, work out what it was trying to do, and find the one place where it was likely to let go. That is a transferable skill. And it does not care whether the object in front of you is an engine, a boiler, or a finance agreement. Read it, find the load path, find the weak point. Everything else is detail. That, more than any refund, is what I would want you to take away. Not suspicion of everything. Just the habit of reading the thing before you sign the thing, right? The procedure so you can run it on your own numbers rather than mine. Find your agreement. Not the advert, not the payment schedule. The agreement itself. Find three figures. The total amount payable, the balloon, or guaranteed future value, and the delivery date. Halve the total amount payable. That is your voluntary termination threshold, balloon included. Add up your deposit and every payment you have made, compare the two, and you now know precisely where door 4 sits for you. Write the date on the agreement in pen, then work the clock. If you took delivery within the last fortnight and you bought it remotely, you have a no-reason cancellation. Inside 30 days with a genuine fault, you can reject and refuse a repair. Say so in writing today. Between 30 days and 6 months, give them exactly one repair attempt in writing with a date and gather video from the first occurrence. Past 6 months, budget for an independent engineer before you budget for a fight. And send everything to 2 addresses, the dealer and the lender. Do that tonight, and you will know 3 things by bedtime that most owners never find out: whether you can walk away, what it would cost, and which of the 4 doors is actually yours. It takes about 20 minutes and 1 cup of tea, and it turns a vague dread into a number. Now I want to hear from the people who have actually done this. If you have rejected a car, or tried to and been stonewalled, tell me what the dealer said when you used the words. I am after the specific phrasing. The fault could not be replicated. The update resolves it. That is within manufacturer tolerance. There is a script being read to people, and I would like to see it written down. And if you have gone through a voluntary termination, say what the hand-back inspection tried to charge you for and whether you got it removed. If you work in the trade and I have got a detail wrong, come and correct me. I would genuinely rather be corrected in public than repeat something inaccurate for another year. I read the replies, and the ones that change my mind are the ones I remember. Subscribe if you want more of this sort of thing pulled apart properly. There is one thread I deliberately left alone today, and it's been bothering me for months. What happens to all these cars afterwards? The rejected ones, the terminated ones, the ex-fleet wave landing on the used market, where they go, who buys them, and what ends up on the advert when they are sold on. I have been chasing it, and I do not have it nailed down yet. When I do, it will be here. Until then, read your agreement before you read your reviews. It is duller and it is worth more.